right, we are looking at CC2. This is section 2.2.3, number 2-60. Okay, so it's asking us to, using the method we discussed with our teammates, simplify the expression. So prior to this, we were looking at how to add positive and negative integers, right? So we did a bunch with tiles and symbols, and then we got to this negative 200 plus 14, and we discovered that in order to add positive and negative integers, there's different methods we could use. Well, one of the methods is, when you look at this question A, negative 100 plus 50, we have here a positive and a negative number. So we are adding, so when adding integers with opposite signs, right? Opposite signs. One's negative, one's positive. When adding integers with opposite signs, what do? We subtract. This is what we learned. We subtract the absolute value of each number. Okay, so I'm going to stop there, and then we're going to go from there. So there's more to this, but absolute value, what do I mean by that? That's absolute value is the positive version of the number. No matter what, it's the positive version. So what is the positive version of 100? It's 100. Or excuse me, a positive version of negative 100 is positive 100. The positive version of 50 is positive 50. So the first thing to do is take 100 minus 50 and come up with our answer, and that's going to be 50. Okay, now, is that the right answer? Well, no, we got to keep going, because now we look at to see, okay, and then we determine the sign. So the sign of the answer is determined by which integer has a greater absolute value. So when we look, the number that has the greater absolute value is 100. And since 100 is negative, my answer then is going to be negative. So negative 100 plus 50 is negative 50. So that's how that's determined. Okay. So when adding integers with opposite signs, subtract the absolute value of each number. The sign of the answer is determined by which integer, okay, which integer has a greater absolute value. Okay. There we go. So that's A. So B, let's keep going now that we have that rule. B is negative 30 and 5/8 plus negative 60 and 1/4. So in this case, we have integers with the same sign, right? So over here, I'm going to write a rule. When adding integers with the same sign, what do? Just add the absolute value of each integer and keep their original sign. Okay, so when adding integers with the same sign, just add the absolute value of each integer and keep their original sign. So right here, those are two negative numbers. So I'm going to ignore the negatives because I want to just deal with the absolute value. So I'm going to add these numbers up. So I'm going to say, what is 30 and 5/8 plus 60 and 1/4? I could rewrite 1/4 to have an eighth, couldn't I? 1/4 is 2/8, correct? 1/4 is 2/8 because you multiply top and bottom by 2 to get the common denominator. So when I add these, I add the wholes, which is 90, and add the fractions, which is 7/8. And then now I've added them. I've added the absolute value of the numbers, but my final answer is going to what? We're going to keep the original sign. What's the original sign? Oh, they were negative, so I got to keep it negative. And so my final answer is negative 90 and 7/8. Okay. So let's look at C. C right here. So C is, I'll write it down here. C is negative 25.63 or negative 25 and 63 hundredths plus negative 30 and 59 hundredths. So I'm going to add these two numbers. And again, this time I also have what? Integers with the same sign, both negatives. So I'm going to just add the two numbers. And when I add numbers with decimals, the best thing to do is just line them up, and you line the decimal place, right? And add them up. Use the algorithm for adding numbers, but line up the decimal point. So I'll line these up, add them up. 2, carry the 1, 2 again, carry the 1, 6, and 5. And then the decimal just drops right straight down. So my answer right now is 56 and 22 hundredths. But go back to what the original sign was. The original signs were negative, so my final answer is going to be, I'll put it over here, equals negative 56 and 22 hundredths. That's my final sign, my final answer for this problem. Okay, last one, D. So D up here, I'm going to do D up here, gives me, let me see if I can get to it. There it is. It's 75 plus negative 30 plus 160 plus negative 29. Okay, so this one, we've got a few things happening here. If I'm going to just add this one straight across to practice my skills here. So when adding integers with opposite signs, okay, so what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start by adding 75 and 30. So a positive and a negative. What do I do to the numbers? The first thing I'm going to do is subtract the numbers because they're opposite signs. I subtract those numbers, I get 45. Okay. When I subtract them, I go back and I look to see, all right, what number, what absolute value is greater? Well, the 75 is, and it's positive. So those two add to be 45. Okay, let's go to my next one. What about this positive 45 and this positive 160? Well, both positives, we can just add those numbers, 205, correct? Then my last one, this 205 and negative 29. Okay, once again, I've got now a positive and a negative, opposite signs. So I'm going to take those two numbers and subtract them. So 205 minus 29. I'm taking the numbers and subtracting because they're opposite signs. I'm trying to add integers with opposite signs. So in this case, this becomes 19. I regroup and I get 6. 19 minus 2, I get 17. So I get 176. So my answer here is 176. But the question is it positive or negative? Well, 205 is the greater absolute value, greater than the 29, and 205 is positive. So my final answer is positive. So there we go. All right, there you are.